Welcome to a video to help you prepare for Task 2 in the edTPA portfolio. What you're going to need to have in front of you is your edTPA Content Area Handbook, opened up to Task 2, which is on or about page 19. And then you also will want your understanding rubric level progressions as well, so that you can look at that a little bit as we go through the task. Okay, so if you don't have your handbook or your URLP for your content area in front of you, go ahead and pause the video now, get that out, get both of those out, open it up to task 2, and you'll be ready to go. So the edTPA instruction task, which is task 2, this is probably the most difficult to actually write up because you have to figure out what video you're actually going to include, upload, and then submit for your official scoring. Before we get to the video, I just want to talk a little bit about your professional responsibilities. So some things that you need to remember is that any video that you're capturing of you and your students is that remember that you have the responsibility to protect the confidentiality of all of your students. So you need to make sure that whatever device that you use to capture recording or audio of your students in your classroom, that you need to make sure to put the safety security parameters in place. So make sure not just anyone can have access to your computer or your tablet or your phone, so that they don't just have open access to those videos. What you might want to do is, I will make sure that I have included it on this page again, but you want to make sure that you review the confidentiality guidelines associated with video recording. And I've uploaded this document on the edTPA resources site, but I will upload it again along with this video so that you can review that. So you need just to make sure that you really handle with care and with confidentiality. Pretend that the video that you capture of you and your students is you're protecting your students' rights. So just make sure that you review those guidelines. So one of the things that you might be concerned about is video quality. So we're not expecting at all for you to produce this fantastic video with moving slides and all of that in there. What we want to be able to do is to be able to see you and some of your students interact. You may not be able to get all of your students that you're featuring in your edTPA in the shot at all times, and that's okay. So you want to make sure that we can hear you, and that when we can hear students, so that you can hear students, because you might need to transcribe. Like if we can't hear what students are saying, you need to make sure that you watch the video every day, at the end of every day that you record, so that you can record what the students said, and help the scorer hear the students as well. Okay, so I do urge you to video record every single day that you are teaching your learning segment. And this is so that you have plenty of video to check to decide what video you're going to submit that best represents what the edTPA portfolio is looking for. And it's really just showing you in the best light, like this is who I am when I'm actually teaching my students. Okay, so for the logistics of that, you do want to make sure that you get permissions from all your students prior to video recording. If you don't get all of the permissions, then you just need to strategically place your camera so that the students that either said, their parents said, nope, can't video record my child, or if you don't have permission back, they just never return the permission form. You want to make sure that you situate the camera and the students such that you're going to lower the probability that they'll be on the video. And you need to remind students, and obviously not in a public way, but to remind the students who aren't supposed to be video recorded that they're supposed to stay away the video. And if they need to access something in your classroom that requires them to walk in front of the video camera, you need to make sure that you help them access those materials without having to go in front of the video camera. Okay. And so you can video from your phone, from a tablet, from your computer, and check with your cooperating teacher or your site support providers and find out if there's a camera that you can use that's actually on campus so that you'll have it every day. And do video record every day so that you have plenty of video to present for your portfolio. So also what I need you to do is, if you turn in your handbook to about page 19, and that's where it's going to tell you what your video needs to include and then how long your video must be. For many of you, you're going to be able to provide either 1 or 2 clips, and depending on your content area, you'll have specific amounts of time of each of those clips. For most of you, it's going to be only about 20 minutes in total. For some of you, it's going to be less than that. And so you really want to make sure that you pay attention to those time frames for your video. Okay. And if you have questions about how to edit your video, the only really edits you can do are cutting them into shorter clips, and only 2 clips is, I'm pretty certain, is the requirement across all content areas. Okay. So then the other thing, you will be able to, like for instance, if you inadvertently get a student's face in the video that they weren't supposed to be on camera, you can do some smudging of their faces, and that's not considered editing. But for the most part, your videos need to be continuous video, okay? Not a whole bunch of minute videos clipped and threaded together, okay? So once you know exactly what's in your video, okay, because you're gonna, what needs to be in your video, you've already looked at definitely rubric 9, which is a subject-specific pedagogy. Then you're going to teach your learning segment, look at the videos every day, and then once you're totally done with the learning segment, then you can start going through and figuring out, okay, what parts of my video really meet the requirements, and that shows me and the students our interactions in the best light. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the prompts, and this is where you might want your URLP so that you can look at how the prompts and the rubrics align. We're going to talk a little bit, I'm going to give you some pointers about how to, or what to consider when you are writing your commentary responses. Okay, so your first prompt is about the learning environment. Okay, and so for all of your prompts, what you want to do is make sure that you are using your video as evidence. So when you say, oh, this is where I showed that that me and my students have, or I show my students respect, they show me respect, and that we have rapport, you would say at time 2.2 minutes and 5 seconds, when we were doing this, this is how that is demonstrating that I'm showing respect for and rapport with my students, okay? So make sure, and it even says it in your handbook, refer to scenes in the video where you provided a positive learning environment. And make sure that you explain, while you know, how did you demonstrate mutual respect for, rapport with, and responsiveness to students with varied needs and backgrounds, and challenge students to engage in learning. And definitely be specific. Report, do the timestamp, as I call it, so that the scorer knows exactly what you mean. Please do not say, well, it's obvious here. No, you need to make it obvious to us through your writing of how that's a positive learning environment. Okay, so really make sure to be explicit about that and refer to scenes in your video. So the second prompt is about engaging students in learning, and you want to make sure to maybe revisit what engagement means. Engagement versus participation. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in seminar the next time that we meet. So make sure to think about, so what does engaging students, okay? Because are you asking questions to hook them in so that they'll participate, or are you engaging students in the learning? And that's what we're really looking for. Not just having them participate in the learning, but actually engage in the learning. So that's one of your challenges to think about before we meet in seminar next. Okay. What you're also going to do, the second part, instructional links to students. That's how you're going to, where you're going to have the opportunity to describe how your instruction linked students to prior academic learning and their personal, cultural, and community assets with new learning. So again, this is kind of a way to look to make some decisions about what video to present. Like, what do I need to show? Well, the prompts kind of lead you through that. This is what your video should show. Okay, and then yeah, so that's engaging students in the learning. Okay, so then, and again, you want to link your explanations here to actually timestamps in the video where you're demonstrating that in the video. And don't worry, we're going to go over in seminar, and you're going to have some access to videos so that you can see what that might look like in your content area. Okay. Then the next prompt is about deepening student learning during instruction. So this is where, hopefully in your video, you're going to show how you elicit students' responses to promote thinking, not just ask yes or no questions. And then how do you build upon students' responses to promote thinking? So both of those things, okay? So it's not just about having a student answer, but then how do you build on that response to build understanding and promote deeper thinking about the concept or the skills that you're working with. Okay. And then, of course, in deepening students' learning, so how are you asking questions? How are those students' responses, and how do students respond to each other, maybe to promote thinking, and all the while really developing the students' understandings of your content area. That's really what that's about. Okay. And really the next prompt has to do with rubric 9. And remember, this is rubric 9 for most content areas, and rubric 8 for world language, I believe. So this rubric really talks about, that actually goes with the deepening student learning during instruction prompt. And because what you're doing, what you're being assessed at, what you're being assessed upon in this rubric is how are you using subject-specific pedagogy to develop students' understanding. And so for mathematics, is how are you using representations. I think for science, it's inquiry processes. I can't remember off the top of my head. So that this is really your subject-specific pedagogy. So again, remember, this is the rubric that you need to make sure that you looked at prior to actually planning your learning segment. So you make sure that you are using this subject-specific pedagogy that rubric 9 or rubric 8 deals with for your content area. Okay, so so you really want to make sure that that's part of your included in your video that you submit, but also included in your planning process. Okay. Let's see, and I want to make sure, yes. Okay. And then the last rubric for the task 2 has to do with you being able to analyzing your teaching. And so the prompt actually asks you, refer to examples, specific examples in the video. Again, a timestamp and a little bit of a, not necessarily a synopsis, but you're going to talk about that timestamp and what's happening in that timestamp. And then the prompt asks you, what changes would you make to your instruction for the whole class and or for students who need greater support or challenge to better support student learning of the central focus. Okay, so yes, you're only highlighting maybe one or two parts of one or two lessons in your video, but you have that central focus in mind when you're answering this question. So this question is kind of like, what were some missed opportunities that you saw in the video? Like, this is what happened, and oh, I could have had an opportunity to do this. I could have had an opportunity to build on so-and-so's response to actually address that question. That was an opportunity, okay? So, and then you want it, so the why, so what are the changes of the lesson, and then why? link it all back to how those changes are going to affect students' learning. Okay, how's it going to support improve student learning? That's what this is all about. Okay, it's not like, oh, I should have done it this way. Okay, maybe I should have done it this way because that maybe the way that I did it, I might have started to, I maybe started to plant some misconception. Okay, so you just want to think about that. What are the changes to your lesson, and why? How do you think those changes will affect student learning? Okay, and this is an opportunity where you're going to include theory again. And so on this rubric, it's the 5th rubric of task 2. And so that's where you're going to make some connections to theory. So what is theory? Okay, support your explanation of, so why do the changes, how do you think the changes that you want to make, how they're going to affect student learning, and what does theory say about that? Okay, so that's what you want to do. You want to make those connections and make sure that they're not superficial connections. Again, this isn't closed book. You can look on the internet, look stuff up if you don't know. So don't just spit out or name drop researchers or theorists. So make sure that you're really being thoughtful about this, okay? And make those connections, because honestly, on this rubric again, similar to your other analysis rubric in task 1, if you could do everything of a level 4, but if you don't make connections to theory or research, you're not going to be able to score higher than a 3. It's just not going to happen. So this is your opportunity to really show that prowess. Okay, so my last thing here is just make sure that you look at your video, and you're going to have to look at your video multiple times to make sure that you're making the decisions that are aligned with what your content area is asking to see for the portfolio, but also just to pick up on those things that are really important, and so that you can identify things that you are doing or not doing that will affect your students' learning. Remember, if you have questions about any of the tasks, please ask your questions on the edTPA general discussion board on Canvas so that everyone can see your question and then everyone can see my answer. So I look forward to talking about task 2 with you in seminar.